So for the better part of the last week or so, I've been seeing an increase in the conversation surrounding one of the biggest issues going on in the first Descendant right now, centered around the EXP. Looking over YouTube comments or even just interacting with the forums, one of the most talked about problems in the game that's really getting a lot of heat right now is XP problems. A lot of this has to do with the core design of the first Descendant. Inherently, unlike many other games in the genre, you tend to have to level your characters quite a bit more. This is for a couple of reasons, but the main being crystallization catalyst and the need to fill out slots. And seeing to be as effective as possible, you simply have to use crystallization catalyst to fill out pretty much everything in order to be a viable character. Otherwise, you're lackluster, and in most cases, most content you won't be able to complete reliably fast, making the experience feel pretty terrible. Now, obviously, I'm a creator who covered news, builds, and many other things of that sort, but I do sometimes want to use my platform to talk about some of the more important issues. Recently, Jaber has been one of the worst characters in the game, after me and plenty of other players doing their part in letting the dev team know that Jaber is in a pretty bad state. I think I went over probably 3 videos covering, as well as tweeting them on Twitter multiple times, and while Jaber is still in a pretty bad state, we did see some improvements in the previous patch. So this leads me to believe that there's a good chance that at the very least are taking some input from the player base. Now, I not only want to talk about some of the problems with the XP, but also give some solutions to them so that it can be a little bit easier to shape the future of the first Descendant in a positive way. The way it's going right now, in my opinion, it feels like most players are probably going to be burnt out within the next month, with most of the casual players fizzling out a lot sooner than maybe most, and a lot of this has to do with the insane grind that is the EXP. Let me be clear, I am a massive fan of grinding out games. This is what I live for. I love this kind of stuff. But despite my love for grinding out games like this, it is very clear that EXP is a pretty massive issue that needs some solution. Currently, as you probably saw with my previous video and a lot of videos currently on the platform, almost every creator is looking to find the next big thing in being able to get EXP done within a few minutes. Right now, what we have currently to be able to get EXP in a reasonable time is 1, sitting in the bunny cave, hoping some bunny is competent enough to build their character right and willing to sit with you for about 45 plus minutes to get your character level, making it a pretty mind-numbing and bad experience overall. Recently, the abort meta started happening where we would abort the mission, spam killing enemies and mobs in a way that I don't think is intended for the game, further compounding the issue of EXP. Now, some would say, well, what are some of the solutions for this? And for me, I would just take it back to a game I know of that has some pretty good solutions for this: Warframe. Now, if you are a seasoned Warframe player, then you're very familiar with some of the systems that kind of helps the experience go by much quicker. First off, we have access to defense missions, which the first Descendant does have, but in my opinion, it's not implemented very well. The current defense that we have in the first Descendant is an hour-long endeavor, and in most cases, you won't even fully level up your character, meaning Bunny Cave, for example, or even the Vyessa exploit thing that people do is significantly more effective. On top of that, the spawn timers are really long, and the rewards are actually pretty damn bad. In Warframe, places like Hydron, which probably isn't as good as it is now, was really great for getting things leveled relatively quickly. I remember spending about 30 minutes in there and being able to pretty much get the forma that I need. Keep in mind, I was a pretty ineffective gamer back then. I wasn't really trying to impress anyone, but all things considered, it was much faster. More recently, they added the thing Sanctuary Onslaught, and if I recall correctly, don't quote me Warframe players, but I could do about 2 runs and fully max out a frame and slot in a forma with no problem. Currently in the first Descendant, there's really nothing like that. Most of the content is the mind-numbing that you need to do to level up, especially considering you need to kata almost every slot of your Descendant, which kind of brings me to the next point, which is the cost to actually make a Descendant strong is kind of high. In Warframe, for example, a forma was something I used very seldomly for the most part. I think my Nakana may have a forma, my Guandao Prime may have 2 or 3, my Ignis Wraith, which I used for maybe 3 or 4 years, have like 6 or 7 forma, again being a little excessive, but for the most part every other frame or weapon has 1 or less, and they were pretty damn effective without having to invest in forma. Currently, right now in the first Descendant, If I'm not slotting in at least 7, I'm not being effective at all. And for a good portion of Descendant, if you don't have every single thing slotted, you're not capable of being very strong to complete some of the content, or at least do your part to deal a good amount of damage. So what are the solutions? It needs to be one or the other, or maybe even a combination of both. Having to make 7 katas in order to be able to be effective on a ultimate Descendant is pretty egregious in my opinion. I think that the cost of things may need to be restructured. We could also even look at the power of some of the mods themselves. Having to invest multiple mods to get a simple result like mana efficiency as well as like range is something I think needs to be looked at as well. Some Descendants require maybe 3 range mods and 2 or 3 mana mods just to be effective enough to use their abilities in fight, and I think that is quite a bit ridiculous, so maybe even restructuring of that. Another thing that could actually help this quite a bit is how things are crafted. While we still will need to pretty much level a bunch of katas into our Descendants, if we can craft more than 1 kata every 7.5 hours, it'll be much easier for us to not feel so bad when we do it. We can crunch out about 8 or so runs of worth of materials, turn it on for like 3 or 4 katas at a time, and the grind doesn't feel so terrible because, you know, we don't have to come back every 7.5 hours to start it up. If all those solutions isn't something that could be considered at the very least, and this has to happen, is there needs to be way more effective ways of giving us XP. Sitting in a bunny cave is not going to cut it, and exploiting the abort mission thing is just not good. It's a bad look for the game, and it's just a very frustrating experience, a mind-numbing experience if you ask me. Some very simple solutions is to increase the speed in which defense spawns, as well as give players more XP for doing the defenses. I would never touch a defense mission right now. There's literally no reason to do so outside of picking up some of the like amorphous materials, and even for some of the other operations that isn't the Kuiper mine blocking operations, they're actually kind of lackluster in XP and what they give. I'm a firm believer in buffing things, and I do believe XP needs a sizable buff in the game right now. If I didn't have a monetary investment in making videos and guides and stuff on here, I would probably burn out relatively quick. And considering you guys don't have nearly as much time as me, I'm genuinely surprised a lot of you are still playing, considering the insane grind that you need for EXP. Anyways, that's pretty much all I have to say about the subject matter. As I said, I love using my platform to talk about some of the more important things in the community, something that a lot of players are saying but haven't really been able to get their voice out. So I figured I tried to help bridge that gap. If you do agree, disagree, or have anything you want to say about the subject matter, feel free to leave a comment. When you leave a comment or leave a like or any form of interaction, it helps get the video out a lot more, and I feel like most players, at least to some degree, agree with me on some of these things. So leave a comment, leave a like, just so that the video could possibly get out, and so that the devs can actually get a little bit of eyes on it, so we can make some positive changes in the community, because to be quite frank, I don't think many other creators are gonna say anything about this. That's gonna be all for this one, guys, and I'll see you in the first Descendant video very soon.